Welcome to episode 134 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I speak to Mike Peters from Welsh rock legends The Alarm about their fantastic new album, Forwards. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Keith O'Neill from Irish psychedelic electronic band Astronauts. So check it out, and if you like the podcast, please subscribe on your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. Before we begin, here's what's been happening on XS Noize this week.
In the reviews section, Sam Williams has been listening to the new self-titled album from Boy and Bear. It's the Australian indie rock band's fifth album and their first to be released independently. Sam says the band's decision to record with a hybrid of analogue and digital techniques leads to a new, slightly more polished sound, but everything's kept down to earth by singer Dave Hosking's lyrics. Also on the side we have tour news from the Murder Capital, new music from the Boo Radleys, and a feature exploring the link between poker and music videos. And the Foo Fighters continue the build-up to the release of their 11th album with the release of an epic 10-minute track with accompanying short film. The Teacher is the fourth single from But Here We Are. Watch it now at xsnoize.com.
The Alarm's Mike Peters returns to life after a year dominated by pneumonia and a serious leukaemia relapse with new album Forwards. Forwards is alive with melody and invention and destined to contend for a top place amongst The Alarm's extensive discography, one that boasts over 17 top 50 UK singles and over 6 million album sales worldwide. In this interview, Mike joins me from his hospital bed while having his regular treatment to talk about the new album, live shows, performing with U2 in the 80s, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Mike Peters from The Alarm. Hi Mike, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Great to be here, Mark. Always love to be part of the XS Noize family, and good to be talking to you today.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. You're in hospital today. In the last year, you've had pneumonia and a leukaemia relapse. So how are you keeping? Why are you in hospital today? How's things going?
Yeah, this is part of my ongoing therapy to keep me alive and keep me moving forwards. Excuse the pun. Last night I performed in Bristol, and then I get back here to hospital to have my treatment. What I'm having today is a session called immunoglobulin therapy. And I get the antibodies of other people, approximately 1,500 other people who donate their blood to the NHS, and it's screened and I get the best of their antibodies, and it boosts my immune system to tackle all the various conditions I have to live with. My immune system have to deal with things on three fronts, really, on keeping pneumonia away. I've got a chronic lung disease as well, and also leukemia. So this is really helps to keep me making music, keep me alive as a human, keep me being a family member, looking after my kids and being with my wife, Jules, and being part of the community. And I'm lucky to be alive, and I'm lucky to have access to the great therapies like this through the NHS.
And how often would you have to go to the hospital for that treatment?
Yeah, I'm in once a month for this treatment. I mean, ironically, today, just before we got on to the podcast, I was organising my next session because in a month's time today, I'll be playing in New York City. So I've put the treatment back to the Tuesday so I can play the concerts at the Gramercy Theatre, fly back on the Monday and get ready for treatment on the Tuesday. And that's pretty much my life at the moment. I have oral chemotherapy every day at quite a high dosage. That I can feel the effects of, but it's not too insurmountable. And I was having another treatment till just a couple of weeks ago. In between the immunoglobulin sessions, I would have a treatment of rituximab every 2 weeks. And but my blood count is so good at the moment because of all the treatments I have that they've taken me off that. So that's allowed me a bit more freedom of movement and to be able to go and play shows in New York and go to Europe in the near future and also play more shows in Britain, because I've had to keep shows fairly close to home for now, so I can get back for treatments, and I haven't really been able to consider shows in Scotland or Ireland or too far afield. So now that door is slowly opening again now, so I'm looking forward to being able to fill the calendar with more concerts than chemotherapy sessions.
Well, that's good, and we're going to talk about the gigs, and obviously the new album, which I'm loving. It's really good. But I like to going back to the start. Can you remember the first band or artist that made you pay attention to music?
Well, that would have been Slade, to be honest, Mark. When I'm a big Manchester United supporter, and that was me. You're obviously a Liverpool fan, I presume.
Yeah.
Usually one of the two coming from Ireland, and so I was brought up on the Stretford end as a kid in the late 60s, early 70s. And I was obsessed with George Best and Bobby Charlton and all that kind of thing. And then one afternoon on the Stretford end, there was some music came over the tannoy, and it was all the fans were clapping along. And I noticed some of the fans had these like weird tartan bobble hats and patches on their denim jackets that said Slade. And I thought, what's that all about? And I sort of made the connection that it was a music band. And then one time my sister was at home and she put Top of the Pops on, and then the first artist I really took notice of was David Bowie. I was hoping to see Slade, but then David Bowie came on. That classic moment, the most musicians of my age will cite as a big influence, seeing David Bowie singing Starman with Mick Ronson on the guitar. That was really what made me sit up and take notice. And so I decided to go and buy my first LP, and I went to buy Slade Alive. And when I got to the record shop, I looked at the back of the sleeve, and it had things like a song called Born to be Wild, and the bracket said Steppenwolf. And I thought, I don't want a Steppenwolf. I only want Slade. So I wasn't convinced that Slade Alive was just all Slade. I thought it was these other guys doing some songs. So I bought the David Bowie Aladdin Sane album instead. And I took that home, and when I opened up the record and put it on the deck and read the sleeve notes, I heard the song "Let's Spend the Night Together" come on, and I read in brackets after it said Jagger Richards, and I realised, oh, that's the Rolling Stones. So I realised that this record by Slade was all Slade, and Steppenwolf had just written a song, and so for me that was the first moment, but I always wanted to be the guy in the brackets with his name after the songs because of that moment. Really, that was my first aspiration as a musician.
And what age were you when you first picked up a guitar? When did you actually go to a guitar shop and went, I want that one? And then when did you start learning?
To be honest, Mark, the first time was there was a guy from a local band in Rill, one of the sort of entertainment bands that we had when I was a kid in the summer season in Rill. There'd be bands coming into town playing the holiday camps and the dance clubs. And my sister met a guy from a band, and he used to come to their house to where we lived, and which was a pub in Rill on the seafront, the Crescent Hotel. And I think he was trying to get to be with my sister. So in return, and to try and sort of get to know her a bit more, he offered to give me guitar lessons. And I remember him teaching me to play the chord of C. And I think my sister must have given him the boot, because I never got to the second chord. But I was in school, and then there was a geography teacher then said, does anyone play guitar? And I thought, well, I know one chord. So I put my hand up, and there was another guy in the class called Mark Evans, and he put his hand up, and he brought us together, and he showed me some more chords. And there was a shop in Rill at the time called the Music Box. And I went to buy a guitar, to look in the window. And they had this amazing acoustic guitar that was painted red, white, and blue, like a Union Jack sort of colours. That kind of guitar that became famous by Oasis many years later when they played their Epiphones. And I took my mum around and said, Mum, I've got to have this guitar. And she said, okay, well, if you work in the bar and stock the bottles and put the empties in the crates ready for the drayman, then if you work the summer, at the end of it, I'll treat you to that guitar. And then my mum bought me the guitar, and I was away then. That was it. but it was always an acoustic guitar for me first. I wasn't like a lot of kids that had electric guitars first. That came later when I went to work at Woolworths when I was about 14 or 15. I lied about my age to get a job at Woolworths, and they had an electric guitar in the shop. What was it? Winfield, I think, was the make of Woolworths. And I came up with one of their guitars eventually when I saved up enough money for that.
Can you remember the first song you wrote on it?
The first song I wrote or played, the first song I wrote was it was called "Nothing to Do," and it was for the toilets. But I really wrote it in my imagination because I was 17 and I was working at a nightclub in Rhyl called the Bistro, and I lived in Kimmel Bay, just the other side of the Forrid River, Clwyd River. And I was walking home one night from the Bistro, and I was thinking, "How do you write a song? You know, what have you got to do?" And I thought, well, I can imagine my own favourite records in my mind, and I can hear, you know, if I imagine Driving Saturday by David Bowie, I can hear it. I can hear the chord changes, the lyrics, the drums. So I thought maybe that's what I've just got to invent my own song in my imagination. And I came up with this. I was walking along the seafront and just started imagining a song for my own band, and it was called Nothing. It went bam and and off it went. And I got nothing to do, bam, bam, bam. And that was all I had. And then when I got home, I had the guitar, and I had to find the melody on the guitar and find the chords. And the guitar, I realised, became the sort of the midwife to get these ideas out of your imagination into the real world. And, you know, within minutes, my dad's going, shut it up, you know, get to sleep. And I'm going, nothing to do, down in the middle of the night, you know. But that's how it all started, I suppose.
Well, going forwards, excuse the pun, you're about to release the new album, Forwards, which you wrote and recorded in between spending time in hospital. Now, while other people would be resting, you decided to go into the studio and make an album.
Yeah, well, the songs really started while I was actually in hospital because I was in for such a long time last year. I had pneumonia, I got this chronic lung disease, and I had a huge relapse with leukaemia. My lungs filled with blood, and I had to be drained. And I knew I was going to be in for a long, long time. And I was having to transition from an old treatment that had stopped working, that started hitting me really hard. I felt like I had to go through cold turkey. And then I had to be sort of basically exposed to a drug over a long period of time so my body could get used to it, so I could accept the full dose needed to keep me alive. And so I asked my wife if she'd bring the guitar into the hospital for me so I could keep my fingers going and not lose the calluses. And I was very committed to, I wanted to, even though I knew I was going to be in the hospital for a long period, I wanted to walk out of the hospital and not come home in an ambulance or with a walking stick or on a stretcher. I want my kids to see me as me. I really was, that was important to me. So at night I used to walk the hospital corridors and just to keep my muscle strength intact. And then I had the guitar there to keep my fingers going. And I said, I'll just play it quietly. And the nurses were great. You know, they said, no one's asked us if we can bring a guitar into hospital before. And I'm sure if you keep it quiet, it'll be fine. And then all the other patients on the ward, they were like, yeah, play a bit louder. You know, we're enjoying hearing the music. And the nurses had come round. And then as I started just strumming idly and not giving it too much thought, I thought, oh, that's a good riff, isn't it? You know, and then some ideas for songs came. And really what really triggered it was there was one day, and we'd kept it quiet that I was in hospital and hadn't told anyone about it. But then there was a guy hovering near my bed one day, and there was no visitors allowed, generally, just one small window for one person a day. And this guy was there, and I caught his eye, and he said, "It's Mike Peters, isn't it?" And I went, "Yeah." He said, "He goes, my dad's down the ward. I've just flown back from America, and to see him, you know." And I was telling all the Alarm fans on the forums last night, because I'm a massive Alarm fan. He said, was telling him that Mike's in the hospital. He's near my dad on the same ward and all this kind of thing. And I thought, oh no, it's out now. He's let the cat out of the bag. And so I had to write a letter to all the fans just to reassure them, really, and put them in the picture and, tell them what was happening as best I could, and to reassure them in a way, because I didn't want the speculation to take over and the fear to come into it. And I instinctly just signed off the letter with the word forwards. And as soon as I wrote it down, I thought, oh, that'll make a great album title. That's a good song. The next minute, it's formed in my imagination, and I'm birthing it on the guitar within minutes. So that was it. And then as soon as I got out of hospital, I went into my caravan where I recorded most of that last album in the lockdown, and I had all my gear set up, and I knocked out the demos in a day. It was that quick, and I had it all there, and it just needed to be put down, and it just rolled from there almost instantly. I was able to do one half decent vocal on all the demos, and then I completely lost my voice, and I thought, I wasn't sure if it was ever going to come back, because I was started to get into this new drug, and it was hitting me really hard at first, and I was worried. So George, the producer, let's go straight away. He said, your demos are crystal clear, Mike. He said they communicate, the temperature, the tempos are right, the atmosphere, the guitar parts. It's a bit of editing here and there, maybe, is all it needs. And then let's use these as a guide, just in case this is get from you. If we don't get any, if you've lost your voice, then maybe this is the last time people will hear the voice of Mike Peters as we know it. And I said, okay, let's do it. Within 24 hours, Smiley would come up to Blackpool, recording all the drums. And we actually probably recorded the album in real time. About 12 days spent on actual recording. And there was a couple of breaks, but then it had to be mixed, of course. But the recording took 12 days. And at the end, George came to me and said, right, Mike, we've got everything now. What about the vocals? And I said, okay, let me see what I can do. And I went back into my studio and brought up all the new recordings, and then wow, it was there. My voice was there straight away. I sang forwards first, and then I thought, right, I'm not going to stop. I've got to keep going. And I did them all one after the other, 3 takes of each. And I was worried that if I lost my voice again, which I sort of did at the end, it would take a while to come back. So it was, and now it's come back really strong, and the drugs have taken hold. I'm in a great place, and I find it a bit more effortless to sing than ever before, to be quite honest. So, definitely things are working. I've got a fantastic blood count, the best blood count I've ever had for 40 years. So, there's a new Mike Peters on the block, and I'm enjoying walking in his shoes.
There's so many great songs on the album. Let's talk about some of them. At XS Noize, we were very pleased, as I said, to premiere the video for New Standards. It's about the impact of social media. What else can you tell me about it?
Well, I think we do. We just again, while I was in hospital, you could still feel the impact of the pandemic. It's gone away, but it's still here in many, many ways. And I think it's something we're still, as a society, getting used to. Communicating online, we would never have done this before the pandemic, and here we are. I can see you can see me. The fans of XS Noize and the Alarm can hear the podcast, and it's the pandemic made a lot of things very accessible. I don't know if we'd have been able to make the Forwards album without everything we learned during the pandemic of recording through file sharing and doing things over the internet. And I think we're living in the times of new standards, and that was really what I wanted to put across in the song, just to flag it up, like we'd done with the 50 Days in Lockdown Amiga album. That I wanted that record to live in the lockdown time, and now I want it Forwards to live in the post-lockdown. But it's a new standard that we have to live by, and there's new rules, new ways of life, and I just wanted us to be a band that acknowledges that and really tell our fans that things are going to be different from now on. The rules have changed, and we can benefit from the rules, but we have to be responsible for each other. We have to look after each other in these new times, take care of each other, be considerate towards each other. And I've grown up in an era when my mum and dad always used to say to me, if you've got nothing good to say, Mike, don't say anything. But now we live in a society where we say everything, and it can be very damaging, and even in the smallest ways, even when people can be negative about something you've posted, a picture or a video of an event you've been at or a gig you've been to, and then people come up and go, oh, I hate that band, and you might like them. And when you wake up and you read the negativity, it can affect your day, whether you like it or not. And so I think it unfortunately, the internet it does take society down, but I wish, but it has so many plus points that if we honor it and respect it, we can do a lot, much more. It could be a tool for greater things.
Yeah. I mean, the plus side of it far outweighs the negativity, in my opinion.
Yeah,
100%.
I agree. I just think it's great. It's great for all communication skills, and I think it could be better, because it does impact on people's mental health, and people can be, derogatory about everything. And I think it's just good that we can use the internet in positive ways to communicate with each other and inspire each other to enjoy the life we're lucky to have. Because I know what it's like to face certain situations where there might not be a tomorrow or a next month, but so I live for today and tomorrow, and I'm lucky to have them both in my life.
What do you think about the resurgence of AI in music?
Well, I haven't exposed myself to it in any shape or form, but I know our original drummer Nigel Twist once I heard on Facebook's through the community that work in that environment that he'd asked the AI to write an alarm song, and out pops something that's I didn't see it, but some people say no, it makes some sort of sense, and but I'm not really for that kind of thing. I think it has to come from human sources. And I think people will eventually see through AI. If everyone goes on and uses it for the same purpose, it'll just start repeating itself. I think, and I'm sure it's got its uses out there, but certainly not for making music. I wouldn't want to buy into that. So I know I saw that conversation with the Pet Shop Boys saying that they had an unfinished song and it helped them sort of fill in the blanks a little bit, or at least give them a word that they could use to sort of get past the writer's block that stopped them doing that song. But then I think someone like Sting, I saw him quite against it, I believe. And so, who knows? Someone might come along and create the ultimate AI album. But, if in terms of there was that song, wasn't there, that Drake and Weeknd song that was AI created the voices. And then it had to be removed, and I'm not sure if it's ethically a good thing, but someone will, it's punk rock times, and someone will find a way of using it and creating something amazing with it. Maybe who knows? It doesn't maybe work for me, but I'm old school, and someone new coming along might find a great, intelligent use for it. So good luck to them.
Going back to the album. My favourite song on the album is Love and Forgiveness. It's a fantastic track, and I love the refrain at the end.
Yeah, that was a song that came out in the hospital, really. I was, when I started to realise there was new music coming along, I was sort of concerned that I was maybe asking too much of myself or too much of the powers that be that give you the songs. And I wasn't sure what I was going to get this time. And that's why I used quite obvious lyrics, almost like the poet can't find any more rhymes, the doctor's got nothing to heal. In my case, it was, am I the songwriter who's got no more songs left? I was really asking in my imagination, what's left? I've written probably 400, 500 songs, and they've all come from imagination. And I think, is there any more left to come? Am I going to be rewarded? When we did the last album, the War Amiga album, I went online and said, made this big, bold statement. We're going to make a record in 50 days. We're going to write it and record it from scratch. We're going to put it on vinyl, CD. It's going to be on digital. And I posted it online in probably without really thinking it through. And then when I read it the next day and thought, wow, what have I put? What if we can't come up with anything? What if it's a horrible record? What if we, we're diving off the cliff, but is it going to be a soft landing or a brutal one? I wasn't sure. And luckily, the gods of music rewarded us with a strong record. But this time I was in hospital thinking, I'm going to make a record, but what's left for me to find? And I think I was rewarded in the end. In the end, I found myself, I was given love and forgiveness. I was given more songs. And I even remember Googling one night in hospital, has anyone made an album while I've been in hospital? And I couldn't find anything. And I sometimes thought to myself, maybe I've just stumbled into a music mine, a mine shaft here that's no one's been in before. I always think of John Lennon and Paul McCartney. They probably were the first guys to get into the pop music mine and were able to pull out these amazing melodies before anyone else got there. Elton John hadn't been there and David Bowie hadn't been there. Years later, they stumbled in the same mine and got the rest of the songs that the Beatles had left behind. And I thought, when I was in hospital, I'm in a place where no one's been before. So I felt like I got lucky and was able to put all this music out of the air. I always there was a story once when I had to tell when we were playing with Bob Dylan in 1988, and we had to cross a border into Canada from the USA, and we got off our tour buses in the middle of the night, and I had to stand right behind Bob Dylan in line for the immigration, and I knew it was him because although he had his hood up. And you couldn't see him necessarily. I looked over his shoulder. I could see his passport. It had said Robert Zimmerman, his real name. and while I was stood in the passport area in the immigration, a melody arrived in my imagination. It was off on the album that came out in 1989 called No Frontiers, and it was there are no frontiers, no borderlines we can't cross. It was. And I was in that place, when I got back on the tour bus and worked out the chords, I always thought to myself, stumbled on a song that was probably being sent down by the higher power to Bob Dylan, but he missed on this occasion and got me instead. So the Alarm's 1989 song, No Frontiers, is probably a Bob Dylan song, really, but it Mike Peters at the end of it instead.
Brilliant story.
So that's kind of where Love and Forgiveness came from.
What song on the new album do you feel most connected to?
Personally, I like Another Way. There's always another way. That was a song that again spoke to me because that's what I was having to do in life. I was having to find another way out of the hospital. I was having to, one drug regime that I'd lived on for a long time had come to an end. My body rejected it totally, and I had to find another way to stay alive. And luckily I had a fantastic doctor from the North Wales Cancer Treatment Centre, Dr. Hartin, and his medical team, and the staff and the nurses on the hospital have been absolutely brilliant, and they helped transition me from one regime to another and keep me alive, and we did find another way. And I've always been about that. There was a line in one of our earliest songs in 68 Guns, which was one of our biggest songs. And when we came to record it, the producer made us take the second verse out of the song. He said, if I'm going to get this on the radio for you, I have to get to the chorus straight away. And so we took the second verse out. And it was only 30 years later when I came back to look on it on an anniversary time that I realised, wow, we've probably taken the wrong verse out of the song when I read the original lyrics, because there was a line in it that said, if they take our chances, we'll create our own. And that's really what the Alarm's always been about from the beginning. But nobody heard that line from the Alarm for 30 years. And so when I sing the song today, I have that line included in the song, and it makes a lot more sense. It resonates bigger in the audience. And so having a song like There's Always Another Way, it connects the Alarm's current now to its past as well, and that's why I feel close to that song, because that's the DNA of the Alarm, really.
You're in the middle of a UK acoustic tour. You were in America there recently as well. You've just been back. I think you've done a few shows acoustically, and then you're in a break. How have the shows been going?
Oh yeah, been absolutely amazing. I've only done 2, but they've been. I've been amazed at reaction, because I play quite a lot of songs in a short space of time. I actually made myself be quiet. I don't introduce any of the songs. I don't tell any stories, and that allows me space to get more music into the set. And I've really enjoyed surprising the audience, and they think, oh, hear the sort of some chords start up, and then I hear the opening lyric, and everyone go, wow, this song, and it gives me a lot of space to play. I played 5 songs from the new album last night, and they've been going down fantastically well and sitting really well alongside songs from the Alarm music book. And because I'm on my own, and I'm armed with my drums and my electric guitar and acoustic guitar and all the things that can get me killed. Excuse me. I can go anywhere with the music, and the fans can come anywhere with me. So it's been quite liberating. And because when I'm on my own, I can literally move with the spirit in the hall, and I don't have to adhere to a set list, and I don't have to bring other musicians along with me. It's just a ride that involves myself and the audience, and we can go wherever the night wants to go. And so it's been fantastic. So I've been able to play brand new songs from the Alarm music book, and also go back through the decades and play songs that maybe people think they're not necessarily going to hear so often, alongside the songs that I'm known for as a songwriter as well. And so it's been really enjoyable experience, and it's setting me up really well for what's to come when we take the Alarm to New York next month.
But it's also been announced that the Alarm will perform a special guest with the Cult at Cardiff Castle in July.
Wow.
You and Billy Duffy go way back, recording 2 albums for the Colour Sound. So are you looking forward to that?
Very, very much looking forward to that. It's a dream scenario for me. I've often dreamed of the Alarm and the Cult playing together. Whenever Billy and I were doing Colour Sound shows or recording, everyone would say, oh, it'd be great, Bill, wouldn't it? The Alarm and the Cult. And but I think we've always just wanted to let that happen naturally. None of us have ever tried to want to force it. And when it first got put to us that we could play with the Cult at Cardiff Castle, I didn't believe it at first, because I wasn't sure, to be honest, if it was something that would fly with the Cult's ethos, in the sense that, they're like us. We're so forward facing, and we're always about making new music. I respect totally that the Cult, as an entity, as represented by Ian Astbury and Billy Duffy, they don't want to necessarily go and play with bands from their past. They want to play with modern bands opening for them, because they see themselves, quite rightly so, as a current band. They've just happened to have been making music for a long time, and we're the same. And sometimes when you as soon as you put the Alarm and the Cult together in one word, you think of the 80s straight away. You have to. And so that's why whenever I thought of the Cult and the Alarm, I would think of the 80s. I thought of, Ian Astbury and the Holy Barbarians as now, or Mike Peters and Billy Duffy, Colour Sound now. But and so I never considered that the Alarm and the Cult would get together, because neither of us like to go back into those 80s pairings, if you like. And so, but I think it makes sense, now it's happened. I'm like ecstatic, because I think, and as well, the Mission are on the bill as well. And they're like us as well. And the Cult, they make new music all the time as well. Whenever they come out after a period of time, there's a new record. And I really admire them for that. And I think we've all just come to the point, hang on, we've all left the 80s behind, and we're all modern bands. And this is a modern billing. The Cult, the Alarm, and the Mission is a modern billing at Cardiff Castle. Let's celebrate who we are, what we've achieved, where we're going. Let's bring our audience into environment and use this as a bit of this could be a watershed moment for all of us. We haven't played the show yet, but I bet it's going to be an electric event. And because I can see already from the reaction on social media that it's really excited the audiences and of all of our bands. So it's going to be some day out.
I was watching a recent interview with Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins, and he was on the Zane Lowe show talking about his new album. Do you know about this?
I saw that as well.
He said he was on the Joe Wiley show, and she said to him, "I'll play anything you want." And he said, "Okay, play Rain in the Summertime" by The Alarm. She said, as soon as they put it on, their social media lit up. People were saying, "What a great song. Have I never heard this song before?" How do you feel about things like that when you hear things like that?
Yeah, I love Billy Corgan. I've met him a couple of times, and he's a self-confessed Alarm fan. And it's great that he wants to play our music on Radio 1. And I think that there's a perception about the Alarm that's not. It follows us around, and it's not exactly what we are. I think when we first broke in Britain, especially where that perception is its most apparent, is we'd been on tour in America for a long time. We flew back. We did Top of the Pops. People thought we were American. We weren't. We had big hair because we hadn't had a haircut for months, and people thought of us as being a sort of bit of a pop group in a way. I think at the beginning, and it sort of shattered that illusion that we'd built up for ourselves in America, that we were really more like Bob Dylan meets The Clash. That was the description of the band in the beginning. And there was always part of me when we got that first call to do Top of the Pops. It was probably a microsecond of time. And I thought, should we not do it? The Clash wouldn't do it. But I couldn't say no. I was from Rill, I didn't have a Svengali behind me to come with some hip manifesto, and I dreamt of being on Top of the Pops as a kid. Here comes the opportunity, and I didn't have the balls to say no, but we probably should have said no. And then the perception about the Alarm would be different. We might not have had as big a hit single, but we might have, been perceived in a more classic underground way. And I think we've never really quite escaped that sort of stereotype of the Alarm. So I think when someone like Billy Corgan plays the Alarm to people, they're like, "Oh wow, I didn't realise they sound like that," and who's this, but because I think there's a percentage of music audiences think I'm not supposed to like the Alarm, and whereas I think we're right up there with everybody. We're always making new music. We haven't dropped our standards, and we've got a lot to contribute. And I think we're still felt victim of those perceptions that are created by the Enemy and the sort of those journalist types that grew up in the 80s that were quite negative and had there was those music papers in the 80s had editorial policies about certain bands. We had the Enemy, their policy was we don't like the Alarm. And we had a journalist once called Tony Fletcher who created the Jamming fanzine, and he was writer for the Enemy, and he came to Los Angeles to do a big piece on the Alarm, and they were expecting him to do a hatchet job on the band, and he came back and he said, "No, the band is great," and they wouldn't print his article, so he left the Enemy and took it to the Melody Maker. But that's what you're up against, and I think that perception has followed us around, especially in the UK. In America, it's very different. In America, when we got there with U2 in 1983, we had no success in Britain to set us up to have to meet some giant expectation. We're a bit like Billy Corgan. When we got to America for our first gigs, Bono was on the Edge, we're on the radio, and they'd say, "Don't play New Year's Day, put this on. This is The Stand by the Alarm. They're playing with us tonight." And that's how people discovered the Alarm in America. And so I think it's beautiful that Billy Corgan wants to champion the Alarm and play us and turn Joe Wiley on to the band, or Zane Lowe. I think it's really cool. And that's as now that perception about the band is changing now. We're definitely seeing younger audiences come to see the Alarm. Our audience is self-perpetuating now, and we're definitely people seeing us for what we are today rather than what we were in 1983.
And Bono has said that the Alarm are the second greatest rock and roll band in the world.
He did. Yeah, he said a few things about the Alarm, Bono. Yeah, because I was at his solo show in Manchester Apollo when he was doing the Surrender show, and he stopped the gig and he went, "Oh, this is where we played with the Alarm for almost 40 years ago to the day," and he pointed at me in the audience and said some nice things and sent me a letter and wrote me a lovely email over Christmas and all that. And it was great to see him on his own in the Apollo, where I'd seen him perform and sing. So, that we were with them when they played Sunday Bloody Sunday for the very first time ever in Glasgow. And the second time they played it was in Manchester Apollo, and to see him again in recent times, alive and kicking, and show him what a great talent he is as an individual. Forget what he does with U2. I thought his solo show was, one of the most exciting shows I've seen for a long, long time, and very different. And I thought it was really brave of him to do it. And I would say I enjoyed it almost as much as seeing the band themselves. It was that good. So I think it shows you what if they can free themselves from the constraints of stadia and being a massive band. And get back to the basics of what it's all about, and that's unleashing the talent that's inherent, then they still got a great album in them in the future, I think.
All these new people coming on board with the Alarm. If you were to recommend one of the Alarm albums to someone who'd never heard the band before, what album would you tell them to start with? Apart from the new one, you can't mention the new one.
I'd actually tell them to start with one of my solo records called Rise. Right. And I think that's the record that really raised the bar for myself as a songwriter. It's the songs that I felt like I'd reached a new plateau, and I found a place to work in where I could carry everything forward. It sort of took me to be having the freedom to go and write with Billy Duffy from The Cult and not be afraid to be who I am. In the Alarm, I think in the 80s, I think because the sort of tensions in the band, I felt like almost a bit like inhibited as that. Because everyone was challenging the songwriting status quo all the time, and I always felt like there was I couldn't be the songwriter. I was being forced to be a writer with other people all the time, and I wasn't able to be my own songwriter. But when I got to the Rise album, I thought, yeah, I can write on my own completely and make really strong music, and I can go and work with other people when I want to as well. So I would point people to Rise, and then because you can go from that record, it's kind of central to everything. You can go back to the 80s, but you can also jump right forwards into what I do today, and that's really probably the starting position.
If I wanted to make a playlist out of the best Alarm Mike Peters songs, what are the 5 songs that I should have on that playlist?
Oof, there you go. That's tough, because whenever people ask me what my favourite song is, I always say I haven't written it yet, because I'm always striving for the next one. So, but I would start with there's a song called One Step Closer to Home. I think that's probably the best lyric in the Alarm songbook, but it wasn't written by me. That was written by our original guitarist Dave Sharp, and that's my favourite Alarm song. And I'd have to put The Stand in there from the earliest days, and that still connects, and and still keeps cropping up to this day, and sounds like a song that is now and is current. It still sounds great. I would probably add in a song like Drunk and Disorderly from the Poppy Fields. That's another really strong lyric but that's from the modern time, and that's a song that always demands to be played on the set list and goes down an absolute. It's one of the big high points of the live show. There's a song called Breathe from a solo era that's like a massive alarm song now, even though it wasn't written for the alarm, but it's sort of transcended all those barriers of lineups and people and musicians. And then say in the top 5 now, I put something up there like Forwards from the new album, really, because that's one of the songs that sort of penetrated into our top 5 digital songs of the modern era. And that when, obviously the original 1980s songs have a head start in the digital era because they're known when the digital era started. And they've had for 15, 20 years to build up into the millions of plays and all that kind of stuff. Whereas when we released the new record, Forwards and Next from the album have leapt into the top 5. And they're right in there with and have built up a substantial amount of play already. And, I'm really proud of the songs. And so, yeah, it's a toss-up between Forwards and Next. Which one goes in at number 5? So I'll let you decide what should be the 5th one.
I'll put them both in. Let's go for 6. Do you ever stop and think about the journey that music's taken you on?
Yeah, probably every day. I think that. I think I'm lucky to be here. I'm lucky to wake up and have another day to look forward to, and the everything about the past is still omnipresent in my mind. I'm because I've never stopped doing it. I don't have to look back and think, oh, that was great, or look back on it, and think, oh, I haven't made an album for 30 years, and wasn't it great when I could make music again, So everything seems to, the past and the present always seems to come forward to me all the time, and I'm happy to go back. Last night I played "Lie of the Land" in the set from 1982, and it still sounded really. Let's keep the flames of hope alive. Sing the chorus. It felt so alive to play it, and I don't know why I played it. I can't remember what I played it after, but I just thought I'll play "Lie of the Land" tonight, and I was surprised myself because I could remember all the lyrics, and it's a bit of scattergun. It's a bit like a Subterranean Homesick blues kind of feel, and the words just leapt out and they were there really, and so yeah, I love it that we've got this long history, and there's so many stories. People say, "Well, you're going to write the book," and I think I need another lifetime to write the book because every day something special has happened, and so I feel just really lucky to have been part of this whole thing, and And the darker sides of the alarm story add to the lighter parts of it. It's really an amazing journey we've been on. Some amazing characters have crossed our path, and even last week, I'm sat in a room and I'm singing with Steve Earle. It's his radio show, and I'm singing my song, and he's joining in. On the Statue of Liberty. And next minute, I'm in LA, and I'm jumping on stage with Wayne Kramer from the MC5, and thinking, "How did I get here?" And he's like, "Oh, I love the Alarm. We should do some dates, MC5 and the Alarm." I'm thinking, "Okay," and it never ceases to surprise me every day, and. There's a saying that you don't catch the fish if you don't stay in the boat. And I just feel like I've stayed in the boat so long. I've got an amazing catchment of fish, stories and songs to tell.
Just a few more questions, Mike.
Yeah.
I like to ask my guests the following questions. You've been famous for a long time now. What's the stupidest thing you've ever bought?
Stupidest thing I've ever bought? A lot of stupid things. I remember buying a pair of, this is before we got properly famous, where if you call fame what the Alarm achieved famous, but I bought some Spurs once, like Western Spurs to wear. Oh, and they used to clank and clang, and you trip over them. And how do the Cowboys do it? I've got these Spurs sticking out of the back of my boots with the silver star thing that spin around, and I've still got them, to be honest. How stupid is that? I collected them. They're a bit of memorabilia, but a rusty old pair of Spurs. And I was thinking, what am I doing? But they look good for 5 minutes. But they're not very good when all of a sudden the guitar strap, you go on stage wearing Spurs, and they're not good for guitar leads, and they're all getting tangled up, and then you end up falling over on the stage again. The Spurs have got to go.
If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career, what would it be?
I would probably say this. When U2 played at Red Rocks in Denver in 1980, probably June the 5th, 1983, I think it was. The gig got cancelled. The rain was torrential, and the band had flown in all a British film crew. They brought Steve Lillywhite, Jimmy Iovine to record the concert. It was going to be, they had helicopters poised to shine on Bono when he lifted his flag in the middle of this amazing venue in the Red Rocks in Denver. And they had to cancel the show. It was so bad. And they put all these announcements on the radio and said, the show's off. We've organised a free concert for the next day at Boulder, Colorado, in a gym. And Bono said to me, look, Mike, we're going to go and do one song in the rain just to get some outdoor footage, and we're going to reshoot the show tomorrow and cut it in as an indoor concert. And they were so disappointed, the band. I really felt for them. So Bono said, look, Mike, we're going to go on. I'm going to play one song, and then why don't you come on for the encore, and we'll do Hard Rain's Gonna Fall by Bob Dylan in the rain. I thought, great, okay. And he said, that way everyone gets to see both bands. I thought, well, that's really kind of you, great. So U2 walk out on the stage, and they they play Gloria, which was always the opening song on the tour. And it was like a miracle happened. The rain stopped, clouds parted, and Paul McGuinness, their manager, jumped on the stage and was shouting to Bono, keep going, keep going. And they were putting all these messages out to the band and the crew and sending messages up to the cameramen to keep filming. And they played out the whole show. And it was an amazing concert. And I'm stood there waiting to go on. The band come on off for the encore. And Bono comes and goes, right, next song we're going to do Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. I thought, great. And then up pops Paul McGuinness, says, Mike, this isn't the moment for you to go on stage. This is U2 history being made tonight. So you can see something special has happened. Paul, of course. But that message didn't get through to the band. So when they went out for the encore and they swapped instruments, the Edge picks up my guitar, which was set up for me to go on. So my guitar ends up in the Sunday Bloody, and the song 40, when they're playing the Under Blood Red Sky concert. So if I could relive one moment, I'd probably go back to that and make it happen that I got to go on stage with them at the Red Rocks concert and sing Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. I did get to sing it with them the next night when they did the rescheduled show in Boulder, Colorado, the free concert. And we all walked on stage to play it, and Bono says, right, we're going to play Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. And then all of us, me, the Edge, Larry, rest of the Alarm, Adam, but we haven't rehearsed it. We think we know how to play it, but we don't. And we did this most dreadful version of the song, and Bono had to sack us all on stage, right there, all his own band and the Alarm. And it's all there on the bootleg. It's a really funny moment, but we kind of saved it at the end of the day. But it was a great moment. But I'd like to go back to that moment and sing Hard Rain's Gonna Fall properly with U2 at Under Blood Red Sky concert.
I'm not really a fan personally of live albums, but Under Blood Red Skies, I can listen to it from beginning to end. I love it.
Oh, it's a great record, and if you look at the credits, most of it came from Germany, I think, because when they walked on stage at Denver, they hadn't had time to do a sound check because it was all cancelled. No one was allowed on stage because of the rain. So they hadn't really been able to take proper record levels. And I think when you watch the concert and hear it, you don't notice that there's a lot of distortion and not great things about the recording. But if you listen to the album on its own, it's a brilliant album because it's made from other gigs. But if you just listen to the soundtrack of the Under Blood Red Sky, it's not as good as the actual album, but it sounds great when you're watching the pictures and you see the band, and even the camera work worked to their advantage with that film because they hadn't been able to calibrate the cameras. So there's lots of burnout on the video and distortion, picture distortion, and that just enhances and makes the moment even more magical. And that's why it's one of the, history's probably top 10 great live moments. I would say it probably is. It's certainly in the top 100 all-time concert films ever. It's bound to be, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. For us music fans, music is the soundtrack to our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
I always love Quadrophenia by The Who. That's an album that takes you back to growing up in Rhyl, with the mod scene and the skinheads and all the suede heads and the greasers and the Northern Soul in the 60s. It just takes me back there, but it still sounds like it's a very current record. The storyline, there's always so much in it. Every time I go back to that record, I hear something I've never heard before, or I read the storyline and notes, and I see insights into it. And that's always a record that I go to all the time. It just evokes so much for me. The Punk and the Godfather. It's got so many brilliant songs, and then Love Rain on Me at the end. It has everything, and brilliant musicianship from all the band, and it crosses all the. It's a bit country at times. It can rock really hard. It can do ballads brilliantly. It can do songs on an acoustic guitar that goes folk as well, and it's just got everything. So that's a record that I always turn to, and reminds me of why I got into music and why I still love it.
Absolute belter album as well. Love it.
Yeah, classic.
What song or album is your guilty pleasure?
What song or album is my guilty pleasure? Oof. I like a bit of the Bee Gees, I've got to admit. I like Saturday Night Fever. In my spare time, I'm a bit of a DJ on the quiet, and right. I love spinning records. I like spinning records we've got a music bar in our village called The Red, and Friday nights, if I'm home, I always get on the decks and play records. And I'm a bit of a disco fan when it comes to playing records. So I love playing all the Bee Gees and Chic and all that kind of thing. Tea with milk, please. Thank you. Sorry. Lovely nurse, bring me a cup of tea. But yeah, I love playing a bit of the Bee Gees, and I like Northern Soul. I'm a bit of a Northern Soul man as well. I like all the Northern Soul classics, all that sort of stuff. I love playing all them as well. And that's people don't think that of me, but when I was growing up in Rhyl, I got exposed to a lot of Northern Soul in the clubs in Rhyl, and there was two friends of mine that used to go. They could pass as being old enough to get in Wigan Casino and the Torch in Stoke and all that sort of stuff. And when I was a kid and first went to London, I used to go to the 6Ts Soul Nights in the 100 Club, and I get in A.D. Croasdale, who ran, it still does. It's been going for 45 years, I think now. One of the longest running night events in a club in Britain. And I used to work the coats to get in. I'd offered to work the coats, and I used to take people's coats. And then I'd see Shane McGowan had come in. He was always hammered. And I'd let him sleep on the coats all night till the Northern Soul fans would leave at 6 in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. But there's a 60s Northern Soul record compilation, and it's got photos of all the fans from the 100 Club and a couple of the other nights they had in the Moonlight Club. And I think it's called 6Ts in the beginning. And there's a photograph of me in the Northern Soul Club in the inside of the sleeve. People would know it's me, but it's a young Mike Peters in his cashmere suit and his mod suit.
Well, I'll have to hunt that down. It's funny, when I ask that question to everyone, most people say the Bee Gees or ABBA.
Is that right? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I can imagine so. Yeah. It's, I mean, I think the Bee Gees are quite hip, in a way. It makes them, all those records.
The earlier stuff, especially the earlier stuff as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love Run to You. I think that's like an incredible song. That you could hear Oasis doing that. My son's massively into Oasis. And I was sat him down the other week and said, listen to this. Played him Run to You by the Bee Gees. And he's like, man, that's cool, isn't it, Dad? So they're from Manchester as well.
Yeah, that's right. So, Mike, that's me done. Well, thanks very much for taking the time. And hopefully, are you going to be there long today, or are you there overnight?
a little while yet, but not too long. I hope. Got to get back to DJ tonight.
Good.
Putting on some Northern Soul tonight.
Yeah, on the ones and twos, absolutely. Well, Mike, I hope you're out of there soon, and see you again for a pint.
Definitely. All right, Mark. See you soon. Right.